The rain poured relentlessly outside the cafe windows, creating a rhythmic drumming on the glass. Inside, the small diner was warm but bustling with activity. Lily, a young waitress with a worn apron tied tightly around her waist, moved swiftly between tables, her tired eyes masked by a gentle smile. The bills piling up at home weighed heavily on her, but she didn't let it show. Her little brother, Tommy, was counting on her, and she had no time to dwell on her struggles. As she placed a steaming cup of coffee in front of an elderly customer, her eyes fell on a man seated at the corner table. His face was partially obscured by a newspaper, but his tailored suit and polished shoes made him stand out in the otherwise modest diner. He seemed out of place, yet he sat quietly, observing the room. Lily had no time to wonder about him. She turned her attention to a young boy who had slipped into the cafe, drenched from the rain. His clothes were ragged, and his thin frame suggested he hadn't had a proper meal in days. He stood hesitantly near the counter, shivering, his eyes darting nervously between the waitstaff. Without a second thought, Lily walked over and crouched down to his level. "Hey there," she said softly. "You look like you could use something warm." The boy nodded silently, too shy to speak. Lily reached into her own pocket, pulling out the last few crumpled bills she had. She handed them to the cashier and ordered a bowl of soup. "It's on me," she said with a kind smile, placing the steaming bowl in front of the boy. "Eat up, okay?" From the corner of the room, the man in the suit lowered his newspaper, his piercing gaze fixed on Lily. His expression, unreadable at first, softened as he observed the scene. He tapped his fingers thoughtfully against the table, as if making a decision. Unaware of the man's scrutiny, Lily returned to her routine. Her small act of kindness had cost her more than she could afford, but the sight of the boy smiling and eating made it worth it. Little did she know, that single moment of compassion had just set in motion a chain of events that would change her life forever. The evening stretched on, and the rain outside showed no signs of letting up. Lily moved between tables with her usual energy, even as fatigue tugged at her legs. She glanced at the clock above the counter, counting the hours until her shift would end. She didn't notice the man in the suit quietly observing her every move. James Hartman, a billionaire with a reputation for staying out of the public eye, wasn't supposed to be here. A long day of back-to-back meetings had left him restless, and he'd instructed his driver to take the scenic route home. When the rain forced him to stop by the diner, he'd expected nothing more than a quick coffee. But then he saw her. James watched as Lily interacted with each customer, her warmth unshaken despite the challenges clearly etched on her face. He noticed how she didn't just serve food but offered a kind word, a comforting smile, or a moment of understanding. It was as if she saw every person as more than just a customer. What truly caught his attention, though, was how she treated the young boy. She hadn't hesitated for a second to help him, even though it was clear she didn't have much to give. The purity of her actions stirred something in James, an emotion he hadn't felt in years. He thought back to his own life, to the days before his wealth, when he'd been the one in need. Few had shown him kindness back then. The memory was distant but raw, and it left him questioning how he'd let himself drift so far from those humble beginnings. As Lily passed by his table, she offered him the same cheerful smile she gave every customer. "Everything all right, sir?" she asked. James nodded, though his mind was elsewhere. "Yes, thank you." He hesitated, tempted to say something more, but he stopped himself. This wasn't the moment. Instead, as she walked away, he reached into his wallet and pulled out an envelope. He slid it beneath his empty coffee cup, then rose to leave, his expression unreadable. When Lily returned to clear the table, she found the envelope. Curious, she opened it. Inside was a small note that simply read, "For your kindness." Beneath the note was a stack of crisp $100 bills. Lily's hands trembled as she counted the money. $2,000. Her heart raced. It wasn't just the amount, it was the unexpectedness of it. She hurried to the door, hoping to catch the man who had left it, but the sleek black car parked outside had already disappeared into the rain. For the rest of the night, Lily couldn't stop thinking about the stranger. Who was he? And why would someone leave her such a generous tip? The question swirled in her mind as she finished her shift, the envelope tucked safely in her apron pocket. Unbeknownst to her, this was just the beginning. The stranger wasn't done changing her life yet. The following day, Lily arrived at the diner early, still unable to shake the events of the previous evening. The envelope of money felt like a dream, but the bills in her pocket confirmed it was very real. She tried to focus on her tasks, but questions lingered in her mind. Who was that man? Why had he given her such a large tip? As she tied her apron and got to work, the bell above the diner's door jingled, signaling a new customer. She glanced up to see a tall man in a sharply tailored suit walk in. His presence was commanding, yet there was a warmth in his smile that set him apart. Lily recognized him instantly. It was the stranger from the night before. Her heart skipped a beat as he approached the counter. "Good morning," he said with a calm, confident tone. "May I have a word with you?" Lily blinked, momentarily stunned. "Of course," she managed to reply. "Is everything okay?" He nodded and gestured toward an empty booth near the window. "I promise I won't take much of your time. I just have something important to discuss." Curiosity and nerves tangled in Lily's chest as she followed him to the booth. He waited until she was seated before introducing himself. "My name is James Hartman," he began. "I believe I owe you an explanation for last night." Lily tilted her head, her curiosity growing. "You don't owe me anything, sir. What you did was incredibly kind, but I still don't understand why." James leaned forward slightly, his gaze intent but kind. "I saw what you did for that boy yesterday. Most people would have walked past him, but you didn't hesitate to help. That kind of selflessness isn't something you see every day." Lily blushed, unsure of how to respond. "He just needed help. It wasn't a big deal." "It was," James said firmly. "It was a bigger deal than you realize. You see, I've spent years building my business, chasing success. But somewhere along the way, I forgot what it felt like to see people the way you do." Lily's eyes widened slightly as his words sank in. This wasn't just a stranger with deep pockets. This was someone who understood the value of what she'd done. James continued, "I didn't just leave you that money as a thank you. It was more of a test. I wanted to see what kind of person you were. And I have to say, you've exceeded every expectation." Lily stared at him, unsure of what to say. "A test?" she repeated, her voice tinged with confusion. James smiled gently. "Yes. And now I want to make you an offer." Her heart raced as she waited for him to elaborate. "I've spent the better part of my life building wealth, but I've come to realize that wealth alone doesn't bring happiness. It's people like you, people who care, who give without expecting anything in return, that make the world better. I want to help you do more of that." Lily's hands fidgeted nervously in her lap. "What kind of help are you talking about?" James reached into his suit pocket and placed a business card on the table. "Meet me at this address tomorrow morning. I promise it'll be worth your time." Before Lily could ask more, he stood, his commanding presence making it impossible to argue. "Think about it," he said with a reassuring smile. "And if you decide not to come, no hard feelings. Just know that I see something extraordinary in you." With that, he walked out of the diner, leaving Lily staring at the card in her hand. It was simple, with his name embossed in gold and the address of what she guessed was an office building. For the rest of the day, her thoughts were consumed by his words. What could he possibly want with someone like her? And why did he believe in her so strongly? As the hours ticked by, Lily wrestled with the decision. Her instincts told her this could be life-changing, but a small voice of doubt reminded her of all the times life had let her down. Still, by the time her shift ended, she knew she couldn't let this opportunity pass. With a deep breath, she resolved to find out what James Hartman had in store for her. The next morning, Lily stood outside the gleaming glass skyscraper downtown, clutching the card James Hartman had given her. Her nerves buzzed like static electricity, and her heart pounded as she stepped through the revolving doors. The building's lobby was grand, its marble floors reflecting the sunlight streaming in through massive windows. A sharply dressed receptionist greeted her with a warm smile. "You must be Lily Harper," she said. "Mr. Hartman is expecting you. Right this way." Lily followed her down a long hallway, each step feeling heavier with anticipation. When they reached an office with double glass doors, the receptionist opened them and gestured for Lily to enter. Inside, James sat behind a sleek mahogany desk, his expression relaxed yet focused. He rose as she entered, extending a hand. "Lily, he said warmly. I'm so glad you decided to come. She shook his hand, still unsure what to expect. Thank you for inviting me. I have to admit, I'm a little overwhelmed. James chuckled, gesturing for her to take a seat. That's understandable. Let me cut to the chase. I didn't bring you here to intimidate you or make you feel out of place. I brought you here because I see potential in you. Potential? Lily repeated, her brows furrowing. James leaned forward, his tone serious yet encouraging. Yes, what you did for that boy at the diner wasn't just an act of kindness, it was leadership. It was the kind of compassion this world needs more of, and I believe you're capable of doing so much more. Lily shook her head, laughing nervously. I'm just a waitress, Mr. Hartman. I don't know what you think I can do. You're wrong, James said firmly, his voice filled with conviction. You're not just a waitress. You're someone who understands what it means to care for others, even when you don't have much to give. That's rare, Lily, and it's powerful. He reached into his desk drawer and pulled out a folder, sliding it across the desk to her. Inside is a proposal, he explained. I want to fund your dream, whatever that dream may be. If it's a cafe where you can serve people in need, I'll make it happen. If it's something else, I'll support that too. All I ask is that you continue being the person who inspired me. Lily's mouth fell open as she stared at the folder. You're serious? James smiled. Dead serious. Look, I've spent years making money, but I've realized it means nothing if I'm not using it to make a real difference. People like you, people with heart and vision, you're the ones who can create that difference. Her hands trembled as she opened the folder, scanning the documents inside. It wasn't just an offer. It was a fully thought-out plan, complete with financial backing, resources, and support to bring her ideas to life. I don't even know what to say, she stammered. Say yes, James said simply, and let me help you do something extraordinary. Tears welled up in Lily's eyes as she looked at him. This wasn't just a generous offer. It was a lifeline, an opportunity to turn her struggles into something meaningful. But part of her still hesitated, afraid it might all be too good to be true. What's the catch? She asked quietly. James shook his head. No catch, just a promise. Whatever you create, do it with the same heart and kindness that made me believe in you. That's all I ask. Lily's mind raced as she tried to process everything. Could she really do this? Could she trust him? But as she looked into James's eyes, she saw sincerity, a rare, unguarded honesty that told her this was real. With a deep breath, she nodded. Okay, she said. I'll do it. James's face broke into a wide smile. That's the best decision you've ever made, Lily. Let's get started. As they shook hands, Lily felt a spark of hope she hadn't felt in years. For the first time, the future didn't seem like a distant dream. It felt like a promise waiting to unfold. In the weeks that followed, Lily's life transformed in ways she could have never imagined. James kept his word, providing her with not just the funds but also the mentorship and connections to turn her dream into reality. The first step was finding the perfect location for her cafe, one that would serve as a safe haven for everyone, including those in need. Lily threw herself into the process, working with architects, designers, and chefs to bring her vision to life. The cafe wouldn't just be a place to eat, it would be a community space. There would be a board where people could leave messages offering help or asking for it, and a pay-it-forward menu where customers could pre-purchase meals for those who couldn't afford them. James visited regularly, offering advice and encouragement. Despite his wealth and influence, he treated Lily as an equal, valuing her ideas and input. Their partnership grew into a genuine friendship, with James often sharing stories about his own humble beginnings. You remind me of someone I used to be, he told her one afternoon as they reviewed the cafe's final blueprints. I've made a lot of mistakes along the way, but seeing your determination and kindness has reminded me what truly matters. Lily smiled, grateful for his belief in her. I wouldn't be here without you, she said. Yes, you would, James replied firmly. Maybe not in the same way, but someone like you would always find a way to make a difference. All I did was speed up the process. As the grand opening approached, word about the cafe began to spread. Local news outlets picked up the story of the waitress-turned-entrepreneur who was building a space to help others. Donations and support poured in from the community, and volunteers offered their time to help get the cafe ready. But not everyone was supportive. A rival businessman in the area, whose high-end restaurant was known for turning away those who couldn't pay, began to spread rumors about Lily's cafe. "She's just a charity case," he sneered in an interview. "People like her don't understand how to run a business. This so-called cafe will be closed within a year." Lily was hurt but refused to let the negativity deter her. Instead, she poured her energy into proving him wrong. With James's guidance, she crafted a grand opening event that would not only showcase the cafe's mission, but also bring the community together. On the day of the opening, the cafe was filled with people from all walks of life, families, professionals, and even some of the homeless individuals Lily had once helped. The air buzzed with excitement as the first meals were served. As Lily stood at the counter, watching the cafe come to life, James walked over and placed a hand on her shoulder. "You did it," he said quietly. "No," Lily replied, her eyes shining with emotion. "We did it." Months after the cafe's grand opening, it had become more than just a place to eat. It was a beacon of hope for the community. The Pay It Forward menu allowed dozens of people in need to enjoy warm meals every day. Families gathered, strangers connected, and those who had once been invisible found a place where they felt seen and valued. Lily's story began to spread far beyond the city. Journalists from national media outlets arrived to cover the remarkable journey of a waitress who turned her struggles into a source of strength for others. Interviews, articles, and social media posts amplified her message of kindness. And soon people from around the world were reaching out to her for advice on starting similar initiatives in their own communities. Despite her newfound recognition, Lily remained humble. She continued to work in the cafe, greeting customers with the same warmth she'd shown that young boy on a rainy night. And every time she served someone in need, she remembered the man who had believed in her when she didn't believe in herself. James became a regular visitor at the cafe, though he often stayed in the background, letting Lily shine. Their friendship deepened, built on mutual respect and shared values. One day, as they sat together in a quiet corner of the cafe, James handed her a small envelope. "What's this?" Lily asked, curious. James smiled. "Open it and see." Inside was a handwritten note. "Your kindness changed my life too. Let's make sure it keeps changing others. Consider this my pledge to expand your dream wherever it's needed." Beneath the note was a check with an amount that took Lily's breath away. $5 million. Her hands trembled as she looked up at him. "James, I don't even know what to say." "Say you'll use it to do what you've always done," he said simply. "Help others." Lily's eyes filled with tears as she nodded. "I promise." Over the years, Lily's Cafe became the cornerstone of a network of community spaces across the country, all inspired by her original vision. Each one offered more than just food. They provided dignity, support, and hope to anyone who walked through the doors. But for Lily, the most meaningful part of her journey was the relationships she'd built along the way. Every smile, every thank you, and every story reminded her why she'd started this in the first place. One evening, as she closed the cafe after a long but fulfilling day, she stepped outside to find James waiting by his car. The years had softened his once serious demeanor, but his admiration for Lily had only grown. "Do you ever think about how far you've come?" he asked, leaning against the sleek black car that had once carried him away from the diner. Lily smiled, looking back at the cafe's glowing sign. "I think about how far we've come," she replied, "and how much further we can go." James nodded, a rare smile spreading across his face. "You've built something incredible, Lily, but the best part is, it's just the beginning." As they stood there under the evening sky, Lily felt a deep sense of peace. Her journey had started with a small act of kindness, but it had grown into something far greater than she could have ever imagined. Because kindness, she realized, wasn't just about changing one person's life. It was about creating a ripple effect that could change the world. The end.